Well, hello, everyone. I'm David Ryan Polgar. I'm sitting here in New York City to have a great conversation with one of our senior fellows, Renée Cummings. You probably know all about Renée's incredible work around responsible AI and thinking about data, thinking about social justice. We've been privileged to have Renée grace our stage multiple times, whether it's in person and also virtually, as we're discussing today. My role at Authentication Human, I'm the founder and president. Authentication Human is a nonprofit that is committed to growing and strengthening the responsible tech movement and ecosystem so we can better tackle dicey, complex, thorny, wicked tech and society issues, right? So how do we solve hard problems? We were founded in 2018. You can find out all of our work and our projects if you go to alltechishuman.org. But one of the things that we've noticed over the last 5 years is that there tends to be three main problems with how we tackle these hard problems. One, we don't move fast enough, right? Technology moves incredibly quickly. Our ability to consider the social impacts of social media and technology is painfully slow. So how do we speed up our ability to tackle these hard problems? The second issue is how do we bring together people, organizations, and ideas? How do we benefit and leverage the collective intelligence? Authentication Human operates as a meta connector, if you will, to combine these people, organizations, and ideas. And that's why we have a Slack community of over 7,000 members across 85 countries. We have open working groups. Over 1,000 people have taken our mentorship program. We have regular summits and mixers. We have a university network. Lots of different ways that you can get involved. The last part of our kind of theory of change and what we're doing at Authentication Human is that we need to diversify the traditional tech pipeline with more backgrounds, disciplines, and lived experiences. In other words, we can build a better tech future by having a better mix of people involved. As smart as everyone we bring on stage is, we can't solve it alone. We need collective understanding and collective action to create the tech future that's aligned with the public interest. You can underline the word public. We need the public involved, and that includes you watching this. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Renée. Renée, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you, David?
It's a busy Monday so far. I gotta be honest, and I was excited that you were able to do today's live stream because a lot of people today are talking about the big Biden executive order, talking about this kind of safe and trustworthy AI. So I know you were involved in some capacity around kind of some of the understanding of this, but would love to kind of hear your initial reaction so far to this announcement, and then how it intersects with some of your involvement.
Oh, thank you. And I would say that much awaited executive order. It certainly puts a lot of power in the wings of the vice president as she heads to the UK to be at the Safety and Security Summit that's happening in the UK. It also positions the United States in a good place because we've just set the agenda as to what is probably going to be discussed in the UK. When it comes to the executive order, it is proactive to a particular extent, reactive because we know how long we have been waiting for something with a little more bite. Of course, it has a very paternalistic feel, but that is also in keeping with the fact that it offers particular protections. And of course, it is coming out of the office of the president. What I was hoping for and I kept looking for was something that was a bit more participatory, something that was creating some more partnerships with communities, with underserved, high needs groups, with impacted communities, individuals who have been marginalized by technology, offering some kind of leadership as well. So it is very much a sort of top come down kind of approach. The other challenge is, as you've stated, the technology is always ahead of any kind of legislation or compliance or anything that looks at enforcement. So we have a great response that is required at the moment for us to really bring that sort of responsible AI feel to the space. But we know that government is also about bureaucracy. And much of what has been, all of what has been outlined in this executive order needs whole of government. It needs a whole of government approach for implementation. So we've got to now think about questions around bureaucracy when we need real-time leadership at the moment in this space. When we think about a technology like generative AI and how quickly that is moving, is this going to be executed at the same speed, at the same scale? Of course, everything in this executive order needs people to process. It's all at the federal level. Given all that may be on our federal employees' desks at the moment, we've got to ask ourselves, what is the time frame? What is the time frame for these things to be done? There are a series of assessments, things that need to be designed, things that need to be deployed, guidances that need to be created. So a lot happening in that space. What I like about it, it's multifaceted. It looks at the ethics. It looks, of course, at the legal. It looks at the social. It looks at the environmental. It really handles all of the questions that have been spiraling AI for, as long as we've been having these conversations. The big question, what would be the influence on a domestic level, on a national level? What is going to be the influence? Of course, it touches all the key points: safety, security, privacy, equity, questions around justice, questions around civil rights, questions around leadership, and whether or not this is really going to position the United States in a leadership position abroad. So it's something that is well received. We know it's been built upon the AI, the blueprint for the AI Bill of Rights. We know there's been a lot of conversation, but it's an executive order, well played, perfect timing. And as I said, it gives the vice president a really great position and a platform to stand on when she addresses the UK summit in 2 days.
Well, do you think then it is somewhat of, is there any jockeying going on behind the scenes where different countries are trying to maintain kind of their, I don't want to say relevance, but position in terms of, is the United States reacting to the AI safety summit coming up? And then you obviously have countries like Canada that have been very proactive in the responsible AI space. I know I say that because we've done 3 collaborations with the Canadian consulate in New York.
Well, I think that's what politics is all about, right? And that's the kind of dance that you do at the level of geopolitics. I think we have the EU AI Act, so much discussion. I think a few days ago, the UK also put on the table some very sweeping proposals as well as it pertains to safety and security. And of course, today, the president's executive order, which is probably the most comprehensive of them all. There is something in there for everyone, just about every aspect of responsible and safe and trustworthy AI. So it really is a great, document at the moment and something to build upon, but we know it's voluntary. It's an executive order. It is not legislation. It is not about enforcement. It is about a request that's being made at the federal level, a way in which we can probably sort of leverage federal purchasing power to have some sort of impact on the totality and the broadness of the AI market. So of course, there's always going to be some politics in there, the timing as well. As I said, well executed, perfect timing for this, but really, really solid things for us to build upon. The question is, who are going to be the builders when we think about the foundation that's been laid?
And Renee, to build on that, who would be the builders into your earlier kind of question around, hey, you're optimistic looking at the executive order, but you're also curious, to paraphrase, about the participation. I know that's something that you and I always talk about. From what I'm reading, right, it says that the White House has worked with 15, quote unquote, leading companies to develop this executive order. But obviously, there's a lot of different academics, civil society kind of groups and leaders, research groups, and other that are outside of industry that could really contribute. So, in your ideal world, where would you like to see this head? Right. So, there's a lot of discussion today around the executive order, but where does this go from here? How do we get different groups to be involved? Obviously, you're dealing with the high level of the White House, so sometimes it's hard to to grab everyone's attention. But where would you like to see this go with civil society orgs, researchers, and other academics, contributing in some capacity to this overall kind of thought leadership?
Fantastic, and that's a great question, David, because for me, when I was reading this and I was thinking about this and looking at all the different layers and the things that need to be done, I'm thinking about what is the level of AI literacy across government. We know that there are challenges on the level of whether or not this is something that could be implemented as smoothly. As I said, there are lots of things to be done, lots of assessments to be created, lots of guidelines to be created, lots of different types of cautionary types of procedures to be executed. So it really comes back, of course, to the question of AI literacy across the federal government and whether or not this can be impacted. I really always think about putting the community, if not at the center, to lead, because this technology is having real life implications on individuals. The executive order does pay attention to questions around, of course, equity and questions around fairness and questions around justice. It highlights, an approach that landlords need to take, federal benefits agencies need to take, and labor, the labor industry needs to take as well. So some very critical things touch. Of course, I'm hoping that in the spirit of equity, which really guides this document, that even the White House would think about bringing a more equitable approach to the ways in which this needs to be done. We always talk about who's at the table, and we know sometimes in government, it's the same people who appear at the table all the time. So I think the White House may need to broaden its net a bit and really engage with different, more diverse stakeholders. I think that's very, very important. As I said, this executive order, it's comprehensive. It's a great start. It's really a document that we can really press into service, but we've got to get, a much more diverse group of individuals trying to work with the different federal agencies. There is a part of it that speaks about really an aggressive approach to hiring AI talent. Again, we've got to ask ourselves who are going to be hired. Is it going to be diverse? Are all those hirings going to be experts? We really need to sometimes rethink the meaning of experts, in particular, when we're seeing the kind of impact this technology is having on society.
Well, especially when you talk about the impact that this technology is having on society, to quote you, is that I think one of the criticisms of the recent kind of AI Insight kind of forum led by Schumer was that, okay, you can always bring in celebrities, tech celebrities like Zuckerberg or Elon Musk or Sam Altman, right? These are very high level ones that now the general public knows who they are. But to your point around the actual impact of technology, those sometimes are individuals who have that kind of lived experience. They're also researchers who are kind of on the ground level. So I'd be curious, how do you see this building on some of the work that Schumer has been doing? I know that's supposed to lead to a few additional forums. And to your larger point, if you're the White House, how do they go about deciding, right, who to bring to this proverbial table? For a little bit of context, something I've always kind of seen with All Tech is Human, interacting with a lot of governmental officials and maybe large, well-known groups, is that I'm always intrigued by sometimes the disconnect, right? Because sometimes to be in an insulated space you remove yourself from the very kind of grassroots activity that's happening. But I know, like in a lot of your work, Renée, you want to focus on how do people who are actually feeling the brunt of this technology, how do they actually have a voice or a seat at that table? So how would you kind of bridge that divide?
Well, responsible AI, and this is what this executive order is about, responsible AI, is also about trust, and it's about public confidence, and it's about legitimacy. And I think this is what, the world is looking at. Is this going to be executed and implemented in a way that's going to build public confidence and public trust in the ways in which technology is being handled, or the kinds of vision that our tech leadership has for society? So I think it's going to be a bit challenging, because for you to get the kind of trust that's required and the kind of transparency and accountability that are so critical to responsible AI and just responsible technology in general, you've got to ensure that people always see people who look like them. Yeah. Questions around representation, questions around visibility, questions around voice. In this particular document, beyond the word accessible, I'm really thinking about accessibility. And how much did we leverage when we were when the White House was creating this document, our community, neurodiversity, individuals with disabilities? Where is that voice in this document? We know that so much of technology does not, offer space for that kind of diversity. So as I said, it's a great start. It took a lot of work. It took a lot of work to get it out in time. We know for what is happening in the world at this moment, but it's going to take more work, and it's going to take a kind of honesty that's required at this moment to build that public confidence, to build the public trust, and to let people feel that these, voluntary sort of outlines and guidelines could really turn into something with bite, something with, where there's going to be some level of enforcement. Because again, so much of it, if not all of it, is really voluntary and really requires a whole of government approach and a well-oiled machinery to really hurdle the kind of bureaucracy. So my thing is, when is all of this going to happen? And when it does happen, what version of ChatGPT are we going to have at that time?
We should ask ChatGPT that question, see what they come up with. But to your point, Renée, when you're looking at this executive order, what do you see are some of the weaknesses or vulnerabilities of it? Is it that idea that you talk about of, okay, well, what's the teeth of this, or what's the eventual plan? Are there parts that you see missing? And then after that, I'll bring up a audience question we received, kind of asking about copyright, that I think could be kind of intriguing. But from your initial viewpoint of this executive order, what weaknesses or vulnerabilities are you seeing?
Right, I'm hopeful. We've got to be optimistic. And it's very comprehensive. As I said, it really builds upon that blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights. It really offers a little bit of something in here for everyone. And it really is a great place upon which we can start to build all those guidelines and those guardrails and all the things that we've been speaking about for a very long time. It's the most that we've got, over the course of the last year, when, of course, the AI Bill of Rights was released. The vulnerabilities would be the fact that it's voluntary, would be the fact that it needs to be executed at the federal level, is also one of the other vulnerabilities would be those questions around this requiring not only a level of AI literacy across the federal government to get it done in real time, but it also requires really that sort of a collaboration that is required at that level to really execute this. And one of the main things about that aggressive sort of hiring of AI talent, we know that just on a federal level, how long it often takes to put one person in a position. So it's about the time. What is the time frame? And the challenge is we don't have time, but this is going to require a lot of time at the federal level.
Well, I mean, that's a good point, Renee. It's like, is this a topic that you imagine leading to a kind of collective action for Americans to kind of come together and say, wait a minute, this is a really important moment, right? Because when you think about American history, right, there's always like key moments, like after the Great Depression with FDR and the New Deal, and how people kind of pulled themselves up and said, hey, here's a concentrated effort that we have to build a lot of the infrastructure for the country, and then later on with Eisenhower and the highways. I'd be curious, do you foresee this as something that Americans get behind, or do you view some of the fissures within the community as too great? And what I'm referring to, you might have seen kind of the recent kind of techno optimism letter from Mark Andreessen of Netscape fame, and then VC fame right now, who always has very strongly worded opinions in that hotly debated topic, talking about what are the enemies, so to speak, of innovation, and really kind of framing people who are focused on like tech ethics or trust and safety and things of that nature as being wrong-headed for slowing down innovation. So what's your thought on that, right? Because here we have an executive order talking about, hey, we need to be safe and secure and think about privacy. So how do you balance the fact that you have a certain segment of the population that is thinking any guardrail, any slowdown is antithetical to American innovation, and then you have the other side of the equation who's saying, wait a minute, people are getting steamrolled and getting affected with the jobs they see or they don't see, the bias that can be in it. How do you kind of bridge that gap? Because it certainly seems to be an important area of understanding.
Well, I'll pull this from the executive order. It does look at collective bargaining. It does look at the future of work. It pays attention to questions around displacement and upskilling in real time, and it really looks at building some sort of labor movement to really support the innovation at speed and at scale, and looking at the ways in which we need to protect workers. There is something there. And it's something that we can build upon. When it comes to that question about whether or not we can do ethics or we can do innovation, I always say ethics and innovation could live in the same house. Ethical innovation is the best kind of innovation. And I think ethics affords us an opportunity to stretch the imagination of innovation. So ethics by design and ethics by development and ethics by deployment, I think we can do those things, and we can do those things well. Ethics is not going to slow innovation down. What I would like us to think about when we're thinking about this executive order is, how are we going to engage stakeholders in real time? How are we going to engage communities? Where are the impacted voices? And how are those voices leading the conversation? When we looked at the question around equity in the executive order, it focuses on criminal justice and ways in which we can bring a best practice approach to using AI in the criminal justice space. Under that little paragraph, they list surveillance technology. Is there an ethical way to use surveillance technology in policing? I don't think there is. So even little things like that need to be ventilated just a little more. And I'm thinking at this stage, this is why I'm saying that we have got to have that kind of collaboration and participatory sort of discussion and dialogue and commitment to get this going. But I think this is a big moment. And I think what is required is funding. To get certain stakeholders and certain communities moving. There is some leveraging of federal funds in the executive order that looks at ways in which we could enhance research, and we can enhance questions around how are we going to design these assessment tools, and the ways in which we are going to look at research and doing research in a way that really not only sparks creativity and imagination and innovation and American competitiveness, but research that speaks to questions around privacy, and developing and deploying some really savvy AI tools to protect privacy, to erect more robust security measures. So great things in there, but it has to get national buy-in. It has to get national buy-in for this thing to work. And I'm not seeing that part that really speaks to engaging impacted communities. I'm not seeing that part where there is funding going into communities to build data and AI literacy. I'm not seeing that part where this executive order needs to touch all the different levels of society, from our students, because there is a part that looks at education and using AI to innovate education. But I think the executive order itself requires some public education to really lift it up in places that it needs to be.
Well said. Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be one of the issues, as we both have talked about before and seen firsthand, is that we want everybody to be part of this AI conversation and not think that it's so kind of mystical and removed from their own kind of experience. And then to underline, Renee, one of your points that really kind of stuck out at me when you referred to facial recognition, right? On one hand, you could focus on how do we create facial recognition that's safer or more accurate, but that's the B question, right? So what's the A question is, do we want to deploy it? Do we want to deploy it in this scenario? I think that's always kind of key. I remember one major tech company a few years ago got in a little bit of an issue where they're trying to make a more accurate facial recognition system, because on one hand you could argue that that's a problem, but then to do that they utilized scraped a lot of Flickr photos when Flickr used to be a thing, and then that was problematic for the people who had uploaded their photos to Flickr and then didn't want those photos to be utilized to train a facial recognition system. So it created a big headache all around. But to your point, we need to go to those base questions. But I do want to bring up one question from the audience. The question deals with copyright, right? So this user says, glad to be here. Thanks for hosting this conversation. Based on the summary, it looks like issues around copyright are basically ignored. Can you please clarify this? As a little bit of context. That's obviously a hot issue, especially around generative AI. You've got a lot of writers and comedians, like you got Sarah Silverman getting involved with a lawsuit too, to kind of say that her copywritten material is being used to kind of spit out derivative, ChatGPT content and jokes. Any thoughts, Renee, on that from a copyright perspective?
Sure. I mean, we would hope that it would have been discussed with a little more clarity, but there is a part in the executive order where the Department of Commerce is going to develop guidelines for content authentication and watermarking to clearly label generative AI content, and federal agencies will have to use whatever that tool is really to authenticate everything that is released by the government to build questions around, to answer questions around trust and safety. But beyond that, now this is just the key points that we are reading. The actual executive order itself is a 111-page document. So we just have the key points here. But in my reading, that was the only place that I saw anything that really spoke to copyright and intellectual property and, just the kinds of proprietary rights and trade secrets questions that always come up with a black box. But Department of Commerce coming up with those authentication and watermarking mechanisms that are supposed to deal with questions around, of course, copyright, as well as questions around deception and disinformation.
Mm-hmm. Very well said. For our final kind of question, and then I'd love for you to kind of just tell everyone where they can kind of stay in touch with your kind of groundbreaking work, how they can kind of stay involved with everything you're doing, or see you when you're traveling. I know you do a good amount of speaking across the globe. But for your final question, Renee, what would you like to see people who are now intrigued by this, right? They're seeing the news, maybe their family members or friends, or spouse are saying, hey, did you hear about this new executive order? What's going on with that? And, then they're hearing a bunch of different things about AI and its potential danger, its potential benefits, its potential impact on jobs, its potential impact on copyright. There's a lot of different messaging, right? A lot of confusion potentially for this. What would you like to see people do from this executive order? Where do they go with this, and how do they kind of stay involved?
Well, I just want people to know that this executive order is about you. It is about all of us. This is about our lives. This is about our future. And this is about our legacy in this country. It's about society, and it's about the impact that every aspect of data and technology and AI and generative AI is going to have on all of us. I say wherever you are, reach out to if you're in high school, reach out to your teachers. Make this a discussion in class. If you're in university, have conversations around it. If you are in the workforce, speak to your HR department, reach out to politicians, get involved. I think what is required at this moment is public oversight. Public oversight is still something that is very, very powerful when it comes to accountability and transparency, which is what we need. And if this is supposed to turn into something that protects us all, we need to be part of that process. We need to be part of that process, because at the end of the day, when it comes to the impact of this technology, I think impacted people would know how to build those protections, because they have felt the brunt of it in ways that many of us may not have felt.
Very well said. A beautiful way, Renee, to end it, about bringing in the people who feel the brunt of the impact, bringing them to that proverbial table. So, Renee, we know people can stay in touch with All Tech is Human through our Slack or alltechshuman.org, or our link tree that's on our website. How can people stay in touch with some of the great work, obviously, you're doing as a senior fellow with All Tech is Human, but I know you have a few other associations and a tremendous amount of activity that you are involved with, especially on the speaking side. So how can people stay in touch?
Sure. All Tech is Human, one place. University of Virginia School of Data Science, another great place. And the Brookings Institution, again, another fantastic place. Terrific. Or just here on LinkedIn, which is also a good place.
I think it is. Hey, I got to say, for All Tech is Human, I'm glad we stay involved with LinkedIn, as I think they're playing the long game in terms of a social network. But Renee Cummings, thank you so much for being our special guest with this new Biden executive order, dealing all with a kind of safe and trustworthy AI and all the groundbreaking work that you're doing for the community on responsible AI. I'm David Polgar, sitting here in New York with All Tech is Human. Go to alltechishhuman.org, get involved with our Slack, join our working groups, be part of our mentorship program, attend a summit or mixer. Let's do this, and let's do this together. Let's co-create a better tech future. Thank you all.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.